in the past few weeks, we've had a few more updates on what's to come in Season of Discovery for Phase 4. And upon its release, Season of Discovery was the stylish and attractive new game mode for WoW, promoting the long-awaited vanilla with a twist, and ultimately what was a year-long secret beta for Classic Plus. Where such news at BlizzCon had Classic Andes, new players and some closeted retail Classic fans coming over to rejoice and try things out, and boy, was the start of Season of Discovery an absolute boom and huge success for WoW, seeing a hike in new players and returning players alike, with Season of Discovery seeming to steal the limelight as the hot new model on the scene.
It is true. SoD Phase 1, SoD Phase 1 was huge. It was huge. Undeniably, it was massive. SoD, when it launched, it was big.
Like Hansel from Zoolander. Season of Discovery is so hot right now. Season of Discovery. However, and to put it bluntly, Season of Discovery has stopped dead in its tracks and seems to be in an ultimate state of limbo, with its raging popularity having declined in each phase. With essentially Phase 3 going on for so long, no one really knows what's happening anymore, besides the fact that it seems like the season of winter, everything has died and everyone's inside. So just what is happening with Season of Discovery, and why does it seem that its once huge popularity is dwindling? Let's find out. But just before we jump in, feel free to like and subscribe if you're new here, as it...
What is even worse than the game being dead? Maybe a game that's dead can come back, but SoD has lost the optics battle. There's like the actual quality of the game, and then there's the player perception of the quality of the game. And that's not always the same deal. And so here's my concern. Let's say SoD Phase 4 comes out a couple weeks from now, and let's say it's actually ballin'. It's so good. The new content is awesome. That new amazing content, if such a thing is to exist, it might not be enough to overcome the bad perception SoD has. SoD has a bad perception. People are laughing at it. People are making jokes about it. It's got a bad look publicly, and it's really hard to get those people back and to change that narrative. Even if the content going forward is really good, even if the content is so good, it's hard to shift that narrative. And it's so hard, it might even be just impossible. We gotta see what happens.
It helps me out a bunch. So thanks very much indeed. Now, let's get on with it. So originally, and quite a while ago now, we had a huge update teaser for Phase 3, which also brought about a decent chunk of information about Phase 4, seeing some great additions to the game like dual specs, further itemization for the long term, and the addition of a 20-man Molten Core raid, and a little bit here about endgame. And recently we've had further patch notes going into the more specifics over what's happening in Phase 4, announcing that unlike in other phases, Phase 4 will have a PTR, and that certain runes we found earlier in the game will now just become normal skills that each class will naturally have at lower levels, as well as the fact that Molten Core will also now have a few hard mode options to try and spice things up a bit. So realistically, from the patch notes, it does seem that Phase 4 is beginning to resemble more of what a true Classic Plus version of vanilla would look like, with some of these changes that are coming along, simply to polish up certain areas of SoD that felt a bit too out of shape. And whilst I think a lot of these changes are good and will help Season of Discovery, to me and to a lot of people this just feels a little too...
Just kind of thinking here, let me gather my thoughts. I feel like the one thing that Classic WoW has that no other version of WoW has, and that people really, really enjoy, this is the reason why people love Classic, it's the world. It's the world immersion. It's the interactions in the world, it's the immersive quality of the world, it's the way in which the world forces you, compels you to interact and associate and work together with other players in the world. And this is something that Phase 1 of SoD really did well. There's new runes, and those runes compel you to get out in the world and work together and explore new areas otherwise maybe you wouldn't have done. That was a great thing about SoD Phase 1. SoD Phase 2, middle ground. SoD Phase 3, it's like the Classic devs completely just lost their minds. The big new feature in SoD Phase 3 was something that actually took you out of the world. The incursions, it gets you out of the dungeons, it stops you from questing, it stops you from grouping up and doing elite quests, it puts you in a 5-man group, or maybe you're doing it so you're doing like instanced, just repetitive, cyclic, running in circles. So the big new feature in SoD Phase 3, not only did it not like bolster that world immersive feeling, it totally really diminished it. And I'm worried in SoD Phase 4, if we're talking new content, is it going to make the world experience better? Because that's what you want to highlight. That's what you want to put a magnifying glass on. Hey guys, new world content. We're getting people out in the world. Keep in mind, this is something Som, Season of Mastery, 2.5 years ago did not do. The new content in Som was new raid content, more difficult raid content. I don't think people play Classic for difficult raid content. It's there. People like the world content. And so Som totally neglected the world. And it hyper-focused on the raids. Big mistake. Okay? And so, once again, Phase 1 SoD, big focus, big emphasis on the world. People loved it. SoD Phase 3, what are they doing with incursions? It gets people out of the world. It doesn't reward that. And so, I'm worried with Phase 4, if the big new content is multiple raid tiers, I'm worried they're making the same mistake they made in Som, where it's like, okay, we're going to focus on making raids harder, and we're going to neglect the world. That's not a smart decision. But we don't know enough about the SoD Molten Core raid difficulty thing yet. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, so it's too early to be super crazy or super concerned about it. But we got to see. We need them to focus on the world. Get people in the world, doing things in the world, making groups and forming friends and having PvP, whatever, in the world. Get us in the world.
Late at this point. And unlike other phases, I've not seen many people getting really hyped about these updates, so why not? Well, I suppose you need to take a brief look at what made Season of Discovery so popular at first. So it's undoubtable that for Phase 1 in Season of Discovery, it was probably one of the best experiences I've had for the launch of something new in WoW in a long time. And it certainly matched the hype for previous Classic launch also. The community had been asking for a new twist on Vanilla WoW, and it was here to deliver. I think honestly half the appeal was simply being back in the vanilla world, but with so many people in it to reignite that true MMO feeling which does go amiss in WoW nowadays. And Phase 1 just felt like there was a lot more new things in it, to put it in simple terms. There was a lot of runes with really cool quest lines. For example, I loved getting Divine Storm, having to group up to kill demons that were slightly too high level for you, as well as the runes which you accidentally discovered and took far less time to get, feeling almost like Easter eggs except they were actually useful. And of course, Ashen Veil was booming, although it's debatable how PvP focused it actually was. And to be honest, I also really enjoyed the raid in Phase 1 as well. And being capped at level 25 with these new specs to try out was pretty good novelty, to be honest. And everyone being restricted to running around the world made the world feel huge. However, this novelty wore off pretty fast in Phase 2. And although I loved running Scarlet Monastery with abilities like Divine Storm, finally making my Ret Paladin feel like he was doing something worthwhile for a change in vanilla, the raid of Nomeron didn't really appeal to me all that much. But I thought the PvP addition to Stranglethorn Vale was a cool concept. But still, there felt to be fewer new additions to Phase 2, and we were mostly using the same things from Phase 1, which was fine in some ways, but alas things felt slower. And Phase 3 brought about Nightmare Incursions, which looked very cool at first, but once in the game felt very out of place for me, and I didn't really enjoy.
Do you think there's like one developer at Blizzard whose idea it was Nightmare Incursions? That was my idea. Do you think there's one guy or one girl that works at Blizzard on the Classic team and they feel like shit because that was their idea? Hey guys, let's add Nightmare Incursions. Here's what it's going to look like. Do you think it was one person? Or maybe it was just like it was a collective idea of 10 people. I don't know. If that was your idea, you have to feel pretty bad. That was a bad idea.
Enjoy them all that much. I liked the zones, and I loved seeing the huge portal and thought the concept was cool. And I get they were trying out a new leveling system, but realistically, I'd have preferred these zones to have maybe been turned into some new dungeons and questing areas. And I mean normal questing areas, rather than the strange system we got. As although we get revamped dungeons turned into raids for Season of Discovery, we technically hadn't had anything brand spanking new. And I feel the Nightmare Incursions would have been the perfect time to try out a new dungeon for Season of Discovery. And I think in Phase 3, the level cap not being at max anymore, and still using a lot of the skills we already had from Phase 1, alongside the meta elite coming out and hardcoring Season of Discovery, saw the excitement die out for me in Phase 3. And whilst the speculation is that Phase 3 has gone on for too long in order to give Cataclysm Classic a decent runtime at launch, I don't particularly buy it. Personally, it just feels more like the free-natured lack of planning in Season of Discovery has finally caught up with the team. Now, being capped at lower level did have its charm for me, like I said, but the novelty wore off incredibly fast pretty much after Phase 1. Part of the charm of vanilla is its slow pacing, but my lord is it incredibly slow when you're running around, to then be capped at running around, to only get your mount at the end of Phase 2, where you didn't even need it really until Phase 3. And it was an odd setup that I think grinded down a lot of people's patience, but to me it did really feel a lot of the time that once you hit level cap at lower levels, things just came to a halt pretty quick. And the previews haven't got me mega hyped either. We're just heading back to Molten Core, and you can make it a little harder at this point. People love vanilla, and so do
I think at this point we all kind of acknowledge if Blizzard really was committed to doing this like phase leveling thing like they've done in SoD, 2 phases, 3 is too many. So don't do 25, 40, 50, 60. Do like 30, 45, 60. Cut out one of the phases. Do something. Cut out one of the phases. It's too long.
And if this was vanilla fresh servers, I'd be buzzing to get back into Molten Core. But this is meant to be vanilla with a twist, and well, the twist is no longer feeling all that twisty. And realistically, I think a lot of people have already tuned out, either in earlier phases simply waiting for endgame, so they have more content to do at once, or just waiting for a full Classic Plus at this point. So I think as a blanket statement, and to put it simply, the hype they had banked from Phase 1 and 2 has now left the building after 6 months of the same thing. I'm still interested to see what gets added at max level and ultimately test things out at 60 for the endgame, but I'm not rushing back in the same way I originally was. But I think the Mists of Pandaria remix showed us that you can just throw the rulebook out the window and do what you like in an experimental game mode, which is what Season of Discovery was advertised to be, with the MOP remix acting as retail's version of Season of Discovery in many ways. And it went over the top, making your character far too powerful, blasting through everything, but then made
Seems like retail players really love MOP Remix. I think MOP Remix has been a big success for the retail crowd.
mistakes with scaling, which meant
Seems
sometimes
like
your character simply dies to anything, and for me that was really half the appeal. It seems to be a huge learning step for developing new versions of WoW, to see what works and what doesn't work at a rapid pace, and see what people respond to. And to do such a thing you have to make big bold decisions and act fairly fast to change it next time. And where Phase 1 of Season of Discovery brought this boldness to it, the other phases we haven't really done this. It feels like it's been played a little bit safe, to be honest. And I mean, even for vanilla standards, it feels held back. And we probably should have been at level 60 a few months ago, so we can properly
Very
get and
true.
see how endgame
Yes.
would work, or maybe realistically what a Classic Plus would play like. Overall, I'll probably still play Phase 4 when it finally arrives, and seeing what the vibe is and how classes have been reworked. And I'm glad they're tweaking things to make it seem more sustainable. But to be honest, I'm still waiting for something big, and maybe we'll get that with endgame. But I just feel all of this could have been coming a few months ago to keep the hype alive, or have a bit of ambition, or at least teased us that something big is on the way and it's not just Molten Core with class fixes. Personally, I think the hype for Season of Discovery could
I am really worried that even if SOD Phase 4 is really good, if there's not something big and new and really shiny to get people to come back, I don't know if it's going to go over well. Because right now, I wrote out a list of everything that we know about SOD Phase 4. I'm going to pull this up real fast. This right here. Okay, level to 50 to 60, you have a 50% leveling boost. Your Prebus farm and all the dungeons that we've already done before. BRD, Elbers, Lobers, Scalo, Strat, Diremal. Tier 0, Tier 0.5, rank from 7 to 10, Alterac Valley, K. That's great. Probably some new STV PvP stuff. 20-man Molten Core, Anixia, Kazakh, Azurghost. You do those every 7 days. New profession stuff. Probably new epic item you can craft. We do one of those per phase. Blackrock Mountain PvP. Sorry, it's actually probably not a PvP event. Blackrock Mountain event. We don't know what that looks like yet. I don't think anything here is shiny enough, is new enough, is flashy enough to, like, suck people back in. I'm worried. If they announced a new raid, guys, 20-man Karazhan Crypts, 20-man, Furbolg raid, Timbermaw Hold raid. It's like, wow, I've never done that before. Yeah, I'm going to come back and see that. 20-man Molten Core. I've done Molten Core a billion times. I get it's 20-man. There's some new class design, runes and stuff. I get it. Okay, but we gotta see. We gotta see though.
Could easily return, and it also could easily become the main attraction for WoW again, just if they begin to get a shift on with things. Yet for now we all remain in the limbo that is Phase 3. Oh well, you can wait there. I'm playing Cat Classic and getting hyped for the War Within, so it's up to you. But do let me know what you think. What did happen to Season of Discovery?
Okay, I'm going to upload that video. I'm going to subscribe to this guy too. I'm going to link that video out. And there's that great video.